The rain fell steadily, splashing against the cracked pavement of an alleyway tucked between towering skyscrapers. In the heart of New Haven City, where neon lights flickered and drones buzzed overhead, Lena Hart hurried home after another long day at work. Her boots sloshed through puddles as she tugged her coat tighter around herself, trying to shield herself from the biting cold. Lena wasn't one for shortcuts, but tonight, exhaustion had won over caution, leading her down this dimly lit path. As she turned a corner, something caught her eye, a faint glow emanating from behind a stack of discarded crates. At first, she thought it was just a reflection of a nearby street lamp, or perhaps some malfunctioning tech someone had thrown away. But then the glow moved ever so slightly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Curiosity outweighed her wariness, and she stepped closer. Peering over the edge of the crates, Lena froze. There, huddled under a torn blanket, was a small figure that couldn't possibly belong to Earth. Its skin shimmered softly, casting a pale light onto the wet ground. Large, almond-shaped eyes blinked up at her, wide with fear yet oddly intelligent. The creature looked like a child, fragile, trembling, and soaked to the bone. Lena's mind raced. Was this real? Had she stumbled upon evidence of alien life right here in her own city? She'd read about humanity's first contact missions and rumors of extraterrestrial refugees, but nothing prepared her for actually seeing one in person. For a moment, all she could do was stare, unsure whether to run or help. But Lena wasn't the kind of person who ran from trouble. A lifetime of fixing broken things, whether they were machines or people, had taught her the value of compassion. Taking a deep breath, she knelt beside the glowing child. "Hey," she said gently, keeping her voice calm. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The child didn't respond verbally but tilted its head, studying her with those luminous eyes. Slowly, it reached out a tiny hand, fingers trembling. Lena hesitated for only a second before taking it. The touch was warm, almost electric, sending a strange tingling sensation up her arm. It felt alive, in a way she couldn't quite explain. "Come on," Lena murmured, slipping off her coat and draping it around the child's shoulders. "Let's get you somewhere safe." Carrying the child back to her apartment wasn't easy. It clung to her tightly, its body radiating both warmth and a peculiar energy that made her hair stand on end. Passers-by gave them curious glances, but no one stopped her. By the time they reached her modest flat, Lena was drenched and exhausted. But the child seemed marginally better, its glow steadier now. Once inside, Lena wrapped the child in a blanket and set about drying it off. She offered food and water, though the child refused everything except a mug of warm milk. Watching it sip cautiously, Lena couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just any stray alien. It was intelligent, aware, and clearly frightened. "You're safe here," she assured it, sitting cross-legged on the floor nearby. "I don't know how you ended up on Earth, but I promise I'll take care of you." The child regarded her silently, then placed a delicate hand over its chest and hummed a soft, melodic tune. Lena smiled despite herself. "That's nice," she said. "Maybe we can figure out your name later." Over the next few days, Lena did her best to make the child comfortable. She scavenged old clothes and blankets, modifying them to fit its slender frame. Though it still didn't speak, it began communicating through gestures and drawings scrawled on scraps of paper. One picture showed stars connected by lines, forming constellations Lena didn't recognize. Another depicted what looked like a grand palace surrounded by floating islands. Despite the language barrier, Lena found herself growing fond of the child. She nicknamed him Alos, inspired by the symbols he kept drawing, a combination of shapes resembling ancient runes. To her surprise, he responded positively to the name, repeating it in his own lilting tone whenever she called him. Still, questions lingered in Lena's mind. Where had Alos come from? Why was he alone? And most importantly, why did he seem to carry an air of importance, as if he weren't just any lost traveler but someone significant? For now, though, those mysteries would have to wait. All that mattered was keeping Alos safe and figuring out why strange occurrences were beginning to happen around her apartment. Lights flickered when Alos grew upset. Objects shifted slightly when he focused intently on them. Lena told herself it was probably stress playing tricks on her mind, but deep down, she knew there was more to this child than met the eye. Lena's days quickly fell into a new rhythm, one that revolved around caring for Alos and trying to understand the strange phenomena surrounding him. Though she had no idea how to communicate with him beyond gestures and simple drawings, Alos seemed to adapt well to life in her small apartment. He would spend hours sketching intricate patterns on scraps of paper or staring out the window at the city skyline, his glowing skin casting faint shadows across the room. But as the days passed, it became impossible for Lena to ignore the odd things happening around them. One evening, while cooking dinner, she noticed the kitchen light flickering erratically. At first, she thought it was just another faulty bulb. Her building wasn't exactly known for its reliable wiring. But when she turned to check on Alos, who was sitting quietly at the table, she saw his hands trembling slightly, his eyes fixed intently on the ceiling. The moment he relaxed, the light stabilized. Lena shook her head, telling herself it was coincidence. Yet deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that Alos was somehow connected to what was happening. Over the next few days, more inexplicable events occurred. A glass nearly slipped from Lena's hand but stopped midair before crashing to the floor. Drawers opened and closed on their own. Once, while tidying up, Lena found a pen hovering inches above the desk, spinning slowly as if caught in an invisible current. At first, she tried to rationalize these incidents. Maybe stress was making her imagine things, or perhaps there was some kind of electromagnetic interference caused by nearby tech. But one night, everything changed. Lena had been working late, repairing a malfunctioning drone for extra cash. Alos sat beside her, watching silently as she tinkered with wires and circuits. Suddenly, the drone sparked, sending a shower of embers onto the table. Startled, Lena yelped and jumped back, knocking over a cup of coffee. As the liquid spilled toward Alos, he raised a hand instinctively, and the entire puddle froze in place, suspended like a shimmering sheet of glass. Lena stared, her heart pounding. "What?" she whispered, too stunned to move. Slowly, the floating liquid settled back onto the table, leaving behind not a single drop out of place. Alos looked up at her, his expression unreadable. For the first time since finding him, Lena felt a pang of fear, not of Alos himself, but of what he might represent. The next morning, unable to sleep after the previous night's events, Lena decided to dig deeper. She fired up her computer and began searching for information about alien species with telekinetic abilities. Her initial searches yielded little more than speculative articles and conspiracy theories. Frustrated, she expanded her search to include classified databases accessible only to engineers and scientists like herself. It took hours of scrolling through dense technical jargon, but eventually she stumbled upon something intriguing: references to a race called the Zetherians. According to fragmented records, the Zetherians were rumored to be an advanced civilization capable of manipulating energy fields. They were said to possess extraordinary powers, including telekinesis and energy manipulation. However, the documents also mentioned that contact with humanity had been limited, and most knowledge about them came from ancient legends rather than verified encounters. Could Alos be a Zetherian? If so, why was he here, alone, and seemingly abandoned? And why did he seem so frightened whenever Lena brought up questions about his past? Her research didn't stop there. Determined to uncover answers, Lena spent every spare moment combing through obscure forums and archives. She even reached out to old colleagues, asking cryptic questions about extraterrestrial biology, without revealing too much about Alos. Most dismissed her queries as idle curiosity, but one response stood out. Dr. Elias Venn, a reclusive xenobiologist Lena had worked with briefly years ago, replied with a single line: "If you're serious, come see me. Bring proof." Before Lena could act on this lead, however, trouble arrived uninvited. Late one afternoon, as she returned from the market with groceries, she noticed two men loitering near her building. They wore nondescript black uniforms and carried devices that looked suspiciously like tracking equipment. When they spotted her, their attention shifted sharply, and they exchanged a glance before slipping away into the crowd. Lena's stomach churned. Who were they? And why were they watching her? She hurried inside, locking the door behind her and double-checking the windows. Alos was seated on the couch, clutching his pendant, the same trinket he'd worn since she found him. His glow dimmed slightly, as though sensing her unease. "Alos," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "Do you know those men? Are they looking for you?" Alos didn't answer directly, but he pressed the pendant into her palm, his tiny fingers curling around hers. The metal felt warm, almost alive, and for a fleeting moment, Lena thought she saw images flash across her mind. A throne room bathed in golden light, a vast starry sky, and a shadowy figure looming menacingly. Shaking off the sensation, Lena resolved to protect Alos no matter what. Whoever those men were, they weren't getting anywhere near him. But as she tucked the pendant back under his shirt, a chilling realization settled over her. Alos wasn't just a lost child. There was something far bigger at play here, something that could change both their lives forever. The next few days passed in a haze of paranoia and preparation. Lena couldn't shake the image of those two men lurking near her building, their faces etched with purpose. She started taking extra precautions, locking every window, drawing the curtains tight, and keeping Alos close at all times. Her once peaceful apartment now felt like a fortress, but even that didn't ease the knot of dread twisting in her stomach. Alos seemed to sense the tension too. He rarely left Lena's side, his glowing skin dimmer than usual, as though he were trying to blend into the shadows. Whenever she caught him staring at his pendant, his small hands clutching it tightly, she wondered what memories or fears it held for him. But asking questions only made him withdraw further, his melodic hums growing quieter each day. One evening, as they walked back from the market, Lena noticed something unusual. A black van parked across the street, its windows tinted so darkly that no one could see inside. It hadn't been there earlier, and something about it set off alarms in her mind. She quickened her pace, pulling Alos closer, but before they could reach their building, the van's side door slid open. Three figures emerged, dressed in sleek black armor marked with an insignia Lena didn't recognize, a jagged crescent moon encircling a star. Their movements were calculated, deliberate, and unmistakably hostile. One of them raised a device that looked like a weapon, while another called out in a language Lena didn't understand. Then came a word she did recognize: Alos. Her blood ran cold. They weren't after her. They wanted Alos. "Run!" Lena shouted, grabbing Alos's hand and sprinting down the nearest alleyway. Behind them, the armored figures gave chase, their boots pounding against the wet pavement. Lena's heart thundered in her chest as she wove through narrow passages, using her knowledge of the city's labyrinthine alleys to evade capture. She had lived here long enough to know shortcuts and dead ends, but these pursuers moved with alarming speed and precision. Alos stumbled briefly, his small legs struggling to keep up, but Lena scooped him into her arms without breaking stride. "Hold on," she panted, clutching him tightly. His body radiated warmth, almost uncomfortably so, and she could feel his pendant pressing against her palm where his hand rested. As they rounded a corner, one of the pursuers fired a bolt of energy from their weapon. It sizzled past Lena's ear, striking the wall behind her with a loud crack. Instinctively, Alos twisted in her arms, raising his free hand toward the attackers. To Lena's astonishment, a shimmering barrier materialized between them, deflecting another incoming shot. The force field rippled like liquid light, buying them precious seconds to escape. "What?" Lena gasped, glancing at Alos in disbelief. His eyes were wide, filled with both fear and determination. Whatever this ability was, it wasn't something he used lightly. It drained him visibly, his glow flickering weakly as the barrier dissipated. They ducked into a service tunnel, slipping through a maintenance hatch that led underground. The narrow passageway smelled of damp concrete and rusted metal, but it offered temporary refuge. Lena crouched low, holding Alos close as they listened for footsteps above. For several agonizing minutes, all they heard was the distant echo of voices shouting orders. When the sounds finally faded, Lena exhaled shakily. "We're safe, for now," she whispered, brushing a strand of damp hair from Alos's face. He looked up at her, his expression haunted but resolute. She hugged him tightly, feeling his tiny frame tremble against hers. Once they returned home, Lena locked the door and barricaded it with furniture. Exhaustion clawed at her, but she couldn't afford to rest yet. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, she turned to Alos, her voice firm but gentle. "You need to tell me what's going on. Who are those people? Why are they after you?" For a moment, Alos hesitated, his luminous eyes searching hers. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, he began sketching on a piece of paper. First, he drew the crescent and star insignia worn by their attackers. Beneath it, he added a crude depiction of a throne surrounded by stars, along with stick figure silhouettes, one standing tall, crowned, and another kneeling, shackled. Finally, he pointed to himself, then to the crowned figure. Lena's breath caught. "Your royalty," she whispered, incredulous. Alos nodded solemnly, placing his hand over his chest and humming softly. The melody carried a tone of sadness, as if he were mourning something or someone. Next, he drew a jagged line cutting through the throne, splitting it apart. Above it, he scrawled a name she couldn't pronounce but recognized from her research, Callus Thorn. The letters sent a chill down her spine. This wasn't just some random alien fugitive. Alos was the heir to something vast, powerful, and evidently contested. "And your pendant," Lena murmured, reaching for the trinket around his neck. Alos flinched slightly but allowed her to examine it. As she turned it over in her fingers, she noticed faint engravings on its surface, symbols that matched those in the ancient records she'd read about the Cytherians. Whatever this pendant was, it wasn't just decorative. It was a key, a marker of identity, perhaps even a source of power. Alos took the pendant back, cradling it protectively. His gaze met hers, and for the first time, Lena saw not just fear but trust. He trusted her to help him, to protect him, even though she barely understood what was happening. That night, as Alos curled up on the couch, exhausted from the ordeal, Lena sat awake, staring at the pendant's faint glow. She knew they couldn't stay hidden forever. Sooner or later, those men, or others like them, would find them again. And when they did, Lena vowed silently she would be ready. But readiness meant answers, and answers meant seeking help from someone who might actually know what they were dealing with. Tomorrow, she decided, she would visit Dr. Elias Venn, the only person she trusted to unravel the mystery of Alos's origins. The next morning, Lena woke early, her mind racing with questions and fears. She glanced at Alos, who was still asleep on the couch, his faint glow pulsing softly like a heartbeat. For a moment, she allowed herself to marvel at how much had changed in such a short time. Just weeks ago, her biggest worry had been fixing malfunctioning drones. Now she was caring for an alien child who might be the heir to a galactic empire, and running from people who wanted him dead. But there was no time to dwell on how surreal her life had become. Today, they were going to see Dr. Elias Venn, the one person who might have answers. After dressing quickly and gathering supplies, Lena gently woke Alos. His eyes fluttered open, and he sat up, clutching his pendant as if it were a lifeline. "We're going somewhere safe," Lena told him, kneeling beside him. "A friend of mine will help us figure out what's happening. Do you trust me?" Alos nodded slowly, his expression serious but calm. Lena smiled despite her nerves. "Good. Let's go." Their journey to Dr. Ven's secluded lab took them far outside the city, into the rolling hills where technology gave way to nature. The air smelled cleaner here, free of the smog and noise that choked New Haven City. As they approached the lab, a modest building tucked among trees, Lena felt a flicker of relief. If anyone could shed light on Alos's origins, it was Dr. Ven. Dr. Elias Ven greeted them at the door, his wild gray hair sticking out in all directions and his glasses perched precariously on the tip of his nose. He looked exactly as Lena remembered, eccentric, brilliant, and utterly unpredictable. "Lena Hart," he exclaimed, ushering them inside. "I didn't think you'd actually show up. And is this your proof?" His gaze landed on Alos, who stood slightly behind Lena, clinging to her hand. "This is Alos," Lena said, gesturing toward the glowing child. Well, let's just say I need your expertise." Dr. Ven adjusted his glasses and crouched down to get a better look at Alos. "Fascinating," he murmured, studying the boy's shimmering skin and pendant. "May I?" he asked, holding out a hand. Alos hesitated but eventually nodded, allowing Dr. Ven to examine the pendant more closely. The scientist's eyes widened as he traced the engravings with his fingers. "Incredible," he breathed. "This isn't just jewelry, it's a royal artifact. Zitharian, to be exact." Lena's stomach tightened. "You're sure?" "Oh, absolutely." Dr. Ven straightened, his tone shifting from curiosity to urgency. "The Zitharians are, or were, one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Their empire spanned hundreds of star systems before a coup d'état tore it apart years ago. Rumor has it the heir to the throne disappeared during the chaos." He paused, looking between Lena and Alos. "If I'm not mistaken, young man, you're that heir." Alos didn't respond verbally, but his grip on Lena's hand tightened. Lena swallowed hard, processing what she'd just heard. This wasn't just about protecting a lost child anymore. It was about safeguarding the future of an entire civilization. "And those men chasing us?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. Dr. Ven frowned. "That insignia. They work for Callus Thorn. He's the warlord who orchestrated the coup and seized control of the Zitharian Empire. If he finds Alos..." He trailed off, letting the implication hang heavy in the air. Lena's resolve hardened. "We can't let that happen." "No, we can't," Dr. Ven agreed. "But staying on Earth isn't an option either. Callus's forces are relentless. They'll tear this planet apart looking for him if they have to." Lena's heart sank. Leaving Earth meant abandoning everything she knew, the only home she'd ever had. But as she glanced at Alos, who was watching her with wide, trusting eyes, she realized she didn't have a choice. "What do we do?" Dr. Ven led them to a cluttered workshop filled with gadgets and blueprints. In the center of the room stood an old cargo ship, its hull patched together with mismatched parts. "This," he said proudly, "is my baby. It's not pretty, but it'll get you to Zitharian. With any luck, you can rally the remnants of the resistance there and reclaim the throne." Lena stared at the ship, overwhelmed by the enormity of what lay ahead. Space travel, galactic politics, a rebellion against a tyrant. None of it seemed real, yet here she was, standing on the brink of it all. Over the next few days, Dr. Ven worked tirelessly to prepare the ship for launch, while Lena focused on teaching Alos basic survival skills. Through trial and error, they began communicating more effectively. Alos taught her snippets of his language using gestures and drawings, while Lena introduced him to human concepts like gravity and oxygen masks. Their bond deepened with each passing day, transforming from protector and ward into something closer to family. On the eve of their departure, Dr. Ven pulled Lena aside. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "You could stay here, live your quiet life. No one would blame you." Lena shook her head. "I can't turn my back on him. Not now. Besides," she added with a wry smile, "when do I ever take the easy path?" Dr. Ven chuckled, though his eyes betrayed his concern. "Just promise me one thing. Keep him safe. The fate of the Zitherian Empire rests on his shoulders." "I promise," Lena said firmly. That night, as she packed the last of their supplies, Alos approached her, holding out a small drawing. It showed two figures standing side by side beneath a sky full of stars, one tall and one small, their hands clasped together. Beneath it, he had written a single word in shaky letters: family. Tears pricked Lena's eyes as she hugged him tightly. "We'll make it through this," she whispered. "Together." The next morning, they boarded the ship, leaving Earth and Lena's old life behind. As the engines roared to life and the planet shrank into the distance, Lena gazed out the viewport, her heart pounding with equal parts fear and determination. Whatever awaited them among the stars, she knew one thing for certain: Alos wasn't alone anymore. And neither was she. The journey through space was unlike anything Lena had ever imagined. For days, she and Alos floated in the cramped confines of Dr. Ven's patched-together cargo ship, surrounded by the hum of engines and the eerie silence of the void outside. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the viewport, glittering like diamonds scattered across black velvet. It was beautiful, but also terrifying. Every creak of the hull reminded Lena how fragile their situation was. One wrong move, one malfunction, and they could be lost forever. At first, Alos seemed overwhelmed by the vastness of space. He spent hours staring out the window, his glowing skin dimmed to a soft shimmer as if he were trying to blend into the darkness. But as the days passed, he began showing signs of curiosity. Using gestures and drawings, he explained concepts Lena struggled to grasp: how certain constellations marked the boundaries of Zitherian territory, or how energy fields connected distant planets like invisible threads. Slowly, she started piecing together fragments of his world, though much of it still felt impossibly alien. Their voyage wasn't without challenges. On the third day, an alarm blared suddenly, jolting both of them awake. A swarm of rogue asteroids loomed ahead, their jagged surfaces glinting menacingly under starlight. Lena scrambled to the controls, her hands trembling as she tried to steer clear of the debris field. But no matter how hard she adjusted the trajectory, the ship kept veering dangerously close to collision. "Help me," she shouted at Alos, who stood frozen beside her. "Do something." Alos hesitated for a moment, then placed his small hands on the console. Instantly, the ship shuddered as a faint golden glow enveloped its exterior. Lena watched in awe as the asteroids shifted slightly, as though nudged by an unseen force, clearing a path just wide enough for them to slip through. When they emerged safely on the other side, Alos collapsed into his seat, visibly drained. "What was that?" Lena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alos didn't answer directly but pointed to his pendant, which now pulsed faintly with the same golden light. Lena understood then. His abilities weren't just random. They were tied to some kind of cosmic energy, perhaps even linked to the Zitherian Empire itself. Whatever power Alos possessed, it was growing stronger, not because he wanted it to, but because he needed it to survive. As they traveled deeper into uncharted space, another threat emerged: pirates. Unlike Callus Thorne's disciplined soldiers, these marauders were chaotic and ruthless, preying on unsuspecting travelers for supplies and tech. Late one night, while Lena slept, Alos woke her with urgent tugs on her sleeve. Outside the viewport, 3 sleek ships surrounded them, weapons trained on their hull. Panic surged through Lena, but she forced herself to stay calm. "We can't fight them," she muttered, gripping the controls tightly. "We'll have to outrun them." But before she could act, Alos stepped forward, his pendant glowing brighter than ever. With a wave of his hand, he created a shimmering barrier around the ship, deflecting the first volley of laser fire. The pirates faltered, clearly surprised by the unexpected resistance. Seizing the opportunity, Lena punched the thrusters, sending the ship hurtling away at breakneck speed. For several tense minutes, They zigzagged through asteroid fields and narrow nebulae, dodging blasts and pursuing ships. Finally, when the pirates gave up the chase, Lena slumped back in her seat, breathing heavily. "That was too close," she said, turning to Alos. "You saved us again." He nodded silently, clutching his pendant protectively. His glow flickered weakly, a reminder of the toll his powers took on him. Lena wrapped an arm around his shoulders, pulling him close. "You're incredible, you know that." Despite these close calls, not all moments aboard the ship were fraught with danger. In quieter stretches, Lena and Alos found ways to bond. They played simple games using scraps of paper and makeshift dice, laughed over clumsy attempts at teaching each other languages, and shared stories through pictures and gestures. Lena told him about Earth, her childhood dreams of exploring the stars, her love for fixing broken things, and Alos showed her holographic projections from his pendant, revealing glimpses of his past life. Grand palaces bathed in golden light, floating gardens teeming with bioluminescent plants, and smiling faces that must have belonged to his family. These memories brought a mix of joy and sorrow. While Lena cherished seeing Alos smile, she couldn't ignore the sadness lurking beneath the surface. She realized he wasn't just fighting for survival. He was carrying the weight of loss, exile, and responsibility far beyond what any child should bear. Finally, after weeks of travel, they'd reached their destination, the Zetherian homeworld. From orbit, the planet looked breathtakingly beautiful, its surface covered in sprawling cities connected by glowing bridges and hovering platforms. But closer inspection revealed scars of conflict, burnt-out districts, crumbling towers, and darkened regions where once bright lights had been extinguished. Before landing, Lena activated the ship's communication system, hoping to reach someone loyal to the true throne. After several failed attempts, a voice crackled through the speakers, a woman introducing herself as Commander Scylla, leader of the rebel faction resisting Callous Thorn's rule. "We've been waiting for you," Scylla said, her tone sharp yet hopeful. "Bring Prince Alos to our base. We'll guide you down." As they descended toward the planet's surface, Lena glanced at Alos, who sat silently beside her, gripping his pendant. His glow had grown steadier, almost defiant, as if he were drawing strength from the land below. This was his home, the place where his destiny awaited. When they touched down, a group of rebels greeted them, clad in mismatched armor marked with symbols of the old empire. Commander Scylla stepped forward, her piercing gaze locking onto Alos. "Your Highness," she said, bowing deeply. "It is an honor." Alos nodded solemnly, stepping forward despite his obvious nerves. Lena stayed close, ready to intervene if needed. As Scylla led them to the rebel stronghold, a hidden fortress carved into the side of a mountain, she briefed Lena on the state of the empire. Callous Thorn's grip tightened with every passing day, his forces crushing dissent and exploiting resources. But whispers of the prince's return had begun spreading hope among the oppressed. That night, as they prepared for what lay ahead, Lena pulled Alos aside. "Are you ready for this?" she asked softly. Alos looked up at her, his luminous eyes filled with determination. Though he didn't speak, his expression said everything. He was scared, yes, but he was also resolved. He had survived being hunted, chased, and exiled. And now, with Lena by his side, he was ready to face whatever came next. Together, they would reclaim his throne and restore light to a fractured empire. The rebel stronghold buzzed with activity as Lena and Alos settled into their new surroundings. Commander Scylla wasted no time preparing them for what lay ahead. Maps of Callous Thorn's fortress were spread across a large table, marked with red circles highlighting weak points in his defenses. Rebel soldiers moved briskly through the cavernous halls, checking weapons, testing equipment, and strategizing in hushed tones. Lena felt out of place among these warriors, her hands calloused from fixing machines rather than wielding weapons, but she refused to let fear paralyze her. If Alos was going to reclaim his throne, He would need every ounce of support she could offer. She spent hours poring over the plans with Scylla, asking questions and offering suggestions based on her engineering expertise. Together, they devised a plan to infiltrate Callus's stronghold, a risky operation that relied heavily on stealth and timing. Alos, meanwhile, trained under the guidance of Scylla and other rebels. They taught him how to harness his powers more effectively, channeling the energy within him into precise bursts of force or protective barriers. At first, the exercises left him drained, his glow dimming to a faint flicker. But with each passing day, he grew stronger, more confident. Lena watched proudly as he practiced, his movements becoming fluid and deliberate. He was no longer just a frightened child. He was transforming into a leader. The night before the mission, Lena found herself unable to sleep. She wandered through the dimly lit corridors of the stronghold, her mind racing with doubts and fears. What if something went wrong? What if Callus captured them? Or worse, she couldn't bear the thought of losing Alos after everything they'd been through together. Her musings led her to the entrance of the cavern, where Alos stood gazing at the stars. He turned as she approached, his pendant glowing softly against his chest. Without a word, he held out his hand, inviting her to join him. Lena sat beside him, wrapping her arms around her knees. "You're scared," she said gently, reading the tension in his posture. "I am too." Alos nodded, his expression solemn. Then, unexpectedly, he began humming, a melody that seemed both familiar and foreign. As the tune filled the air, Lena closed her eyes, letting it wash over her. It wasn't just music. It carried emotions, memories, hopes. For the first time, she understood why Alos communicated this way. It transcended language, reaching straight into the heart. When the song ended, Alos placed a small hand on hers. His touch was... He nodded again, his glow brightening slightly. In that moment, Lena realized something profound. Alos wasn't fighting just for himself or his people. He was fighting because he believed in the promise of a better future, one worth risking everything for. The next morning, the rebels launched their assault. Under cover of darkness, Lena, Alos, and a small team crept toward Callus's fortress, using hidden tunnels to bypass patrols. Lena's heart pounded with every step, her senses heightened by adrenaline. Beside her, Alos moved silently, his pendant pulsing faintly like a beacon. They reached the inner chambers without incident, thanks to Lena's modifications to their gear and Alos's ability to sense danger. But as they neared Callus's throne room, alarms blared, shattering the silence. Soldiers poured into the hallway, their weapons trained on the intruders. "Now," shouted Scylla, raising her weapon. Chaos erupted. Blasts of energy ricocheted off walls, lighting up the corridor in flashes of blue and red. Lena ducked behind a pillar, clutching a handheld device she'd rigged earlier. With a deep breath, she activated it, sending out an electromagnetic pulse that disabled several enemy weapons. The distraction gave the rebels enough time to push forward. In the midst of the chaos, Alos stepped into the fray. His pendant flared brightly as he extended his hands, creating a shimmering barrier that shielded the group from incoming fire. Then, with a surge of energy, he sent the barrier expanding outward, knocking back their attackers. The rebels seized the opportunity to regroup and press onward. Finally, they'd reached the throne room. Callus Thorn awaited them, seated atop a massive obsidian chair that seemed to absorb the light around it. His armor gleamed menacingly, and his sharp features twisted into a cruel smile as he rose to meet them. "So," he sneered, his voice dripping with disdain, "the Lost Prince returns." Alos stepped forward, his glow steady and unwavering. Though he was small compared to Callus's towering frame, there was an undeniable strength in his presence. He raised his pendant, which pulsed with radiant light, illuminating the darkened chamber. Callus laughed coldly. "You think a trinket will stop me? I've crushed entire armies. What makes you any different?" But Alos didn't respond with words. Instead, he focused all his energy into the pendant, unleashing a wave of golden light that surged through the room. The force was immense, shaking the very foundations of the fortress. Kalis staggered, shielding his eyes as the light engulfed him. Lena watched in awe as the symbols etched into the pendant glowed brighter than ever, resonating with a power that seemed almost divine. Slowly, cracks began forming in Kalis's armor, spreading until it shattered completely. Defeated, he collapsed to his knees, his expression one of disbelief and rage. "It's over," Scylla declared, stepping forward with her weapon drawn. "Your reign of terror ends here." As the rebels secured Kalis, Lena turned to Alos, who stood panting but triumphant. His glow dimmed slightly, exhaustion setting in, but his eyes sparkled with determination. He had done it. He had faced his greatest fear and emerged victorious. Together, they walked to the throne, its dark surface now bathed in the warm light of Alos's pendant. This was his rightful place, not as a symbol of power, but as a beacon of hope for his people. And Lena knew, standing beside him, that their journey was far from over. The days following Kalis Thorn's defeat were a whirlwind of activity. News of Alos's return spread quickly. Commander Scylla translated key phrases for the crowd, explaining Alos's vision for the future, an empire rebuilt on justice, compassion, and equality. The cheers that followed were deafening, echoing through the city like rolling thunder. Lena watched proudly as Alos raised his pendant high, its golden light casting a warm glow over the assembled masses. This wasn't just a coronation. It was a promise of change. But amidst the celebrations, Lena faced a choice she hadn't anticipated. Her role in Alos's journey had been clear up until now: protector, guide, surrogate parent. Yet as the Empire began healing under Alos's leadership, Lena realized her presence here wasn't guaranteed. She was human, an outsider in a world not her own. Could she truly stay? One evening, after another long day of meetings and ceremonies, Lena found herself alone on the palace balcony. The stars above shimmered brightly, reminding her of Earth's night sky, a sight she hadn't seen in months. She missed home, the familiar streets of New Haven City, the comforting hum of drones, the simplicity of fixing broken things. But leaving meant saying goodbye to Alos, and to the extraordinary bond they'd formed. "You're thinking about going back," came a voice behind her. Lena turned to see Alos standing there, his pendant glowing softly. His expression was calm, but tinged with sadness, as if he already knew what she was considering. "I don't belong here, Alos," she admitted, kneeling so they were eye to eye. "This is your world, your people. I'm just someone who helped along the way." Alos shook his head firmly, placing a small hand on hers. Then he pointed to his heart, then to hers, mimicking the gesture they'd shared countless times before. Family. Tears welled in Lena's eyes as she pulled him into a hug. "You'll always be my family," she whispered, "no matter where I am." Yet, as much as she wanted to return to Earth, something held her back. Over the past weeks, she'd seen glimpses of what Alos envisioned for his empire. Not just peace, but progress. Bridges between species, advancements in technology shared freely, resources allocated fairly. It was a dream worth fighting for, and Alos needed someone by his side who understood both worlds, someone who could help him navigate the complexities of leadership while staying true to his values. The next morning, Lena made her decision. She approached Commander Scylla, who was overseeing reconstruction efforts in the capital. "I'm staying," Lena said simply. "For now." Scylla smiled knowingly. "We could use someone like you around here. Someone practical, resourceful, and fearless enough to stand up to warlords." Lena laughed despite herself. "Let's just say I've had practice." In the weeks that followed, Lena threw herself into helping rebuild the empire. Using her engineering skills, she designed sustainable energy systems powered by the same cosmic energy Alos wielded, ensuring no region would suffer shortages again. She worked alongside scientists, architects, and diplomats, bridging gaps between humans and Cytherians. Slowly but surely, trust grew, not just in Alos's leadership, but in humanity's potential as allies rather than outsiders. Alos flourished under her guidance. With Lena by his side, he learned to balance tradition with innovation, ruling not as a distant monarch, but as a compassionate leader who listened to his people. Together, they became a symbol of unity, a boy and a woman from two vastly different worlds, proving that hope could transcend boundaries. One evening, as Lena stood on the balcony once more, Alos joined her. They gazed at the stars together, their reflections glowing faintly against the glass. "Do you ever miss Earth?" Alos asked quietly, surprising her with his first attempt at spoken words. Lena smiled, ruffling his hair affectionately. "Sometimes, but right now I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." And for the first time in a long while, she believed it wholeheartedly. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would still be challenges, disagreements, and moments of doubt. But with Alos leading the way and Lena supporting him every step of the journey, the Cytherian Empire was poised to rise stronger than ever before. As the stars twinkled above, Lena felt a profound sense of purpose. She had started this adventure as a lonely engineer in a bustling city, unsure of her place in the universe. Now she was part of something far greater, a story written in starlight, bound by love, courage, and the unshakable belief that even the smallest acts of kindness could change the course of history. And so, beneath the vastness of the cosmos, a new chapter began, not just for Alos and Lena, but for an entire galaxy ready to embrace its brightest dawn.